A young girl races through a dangerous space outpost, tears falling as she begs powerful alien guards to save her mother from a deadly secret hidden deep within the mines. The wrong choice could cost lives. The right one could change the galaxy forever. What would you do if no one believed your cries for help? If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The watchers at the Saurine checkpoint had learned to read the rhythm of a workday. Boots came and went, carts hissed. The air smelled like hot metal and faint dust from the Karthus mines. Nothing about the line surprised Marshal Jor anymore. Not the tired shoulders, not the quiet glances, not the way the Orion Quarry Guild posted rules in big fonts and offered comfort in small print. What surprised him that shift was an 8-year-old, Mira. Dell slipped on a patch of oily floor and kept running anyway. The sound of her steps was too light for alarms and too fast for calm. She burst from the dim corridor into the checkpoint glow and blurted, breathless, "Please, they're hurting my mama." The words came out thin, but the look in her eyes was a flare. She's in the old rooms and they won't stop. Jor's Saurine features were angles and plates, made for storms, not lullabies. His translator collar caught his steady breath and turned it into soft words. "Human child, your family matters go to settlement office." It was policy. It was also the quiet way some things were allowed to continue. He had said those same words before, and watched the line move along like a river that forgot. Mira shook her head so hard her hair stuck to her cheeks. "They say she stole the company's science. They think she sent it off station. She didn't. She found something and hid it because she was scared, please." The word stole would have slid past him. The phrase company science might have also, but sent it off station would not. Union law cut clean through private contracts when restricted tech or forbidden experiments were involved. Jor looked to Lieutenant Pyre. Pyre, lean and silver-scaled, lifted a brow ridge that meant, "I heard the same thing you did." "Name?" Jor asked. "Mira Dell. My mom is Nora. She reads the rocks. She said the tunnels hum in a way rocks shouldn't." The child's hands trembled, then clenched. Foreman Tufar took her, and 2 men with blank badges. On Ridgeway 9, blank badges meant hired muscle who did not want records to remember them. Pyre checked a slate. Sector C has old storage bays. Mapping is thin there. Jor weighed the rule on non-interference. He could almost feel its edges as if it were a card in his palm. Then he set it aside because another card, stamped with Union law, lay on top of it in his mind. "You will guide," he told Mira. "You follow, not lead. 3 steps behind. If danger grows, Pyre pulls you out." Mira nodded so fast he feared she'd topple. She didn't. She set her small jaw and stood ready, like a tiny anchor for a large boat. They moved fast, down a service lift that grumbled about its age. Sector C smelled like warm pipes and old memories. Dim strips of light blinked awake as the trio passed. The floor grated under Saurine boots. Mira tapped a side panel. "Here, the long way. Fewer eyes." Pyre kept his voice low. "You know these halls well." "When Mom worked late, I counted screws in the walls," she whispered back. It made the scary feel smaller. A coolant drip tapped like a metronome. They turned left, right, then squeezed through a crooked passage where a maintenance sign had peeled halfway. The station had 1,000 places to get lost and a dozen to be found in. This was one of the dozen. Jor halted the group with a hand signal. Voices ahead. Force in those voices like someone pushing a door that should stay closed. He eased to the corner and listened. "You copied readings," a rough tone said. "You knew better." Another voice, cooler, replied, "The data belongs to the guild." Then a strike, dull and unkind, followed by a human breath caught halfway to a cry. Jor moved. Pyre flowed after him. The storage bay opened wide enough to hold silence and shame. Dr. Nora Dell sat bound to a chair that had lost its paint years ago. Her cheekbone wore a dark bloom. Foreman Tufar stood too close with a stance that bragged. 2 blank badge men flanked him. Advisor Cell watched from the shadows, the kind of watching that makes a person forget to blink. "This room closes," Jor said flat. "Now," Tufar scowled. "Go back to your gate, Marshal." "Company matter." "Company matters stop at Union law," Jor replied. "Remove restraints." "She needs medical. She broke contract," Tufar spat. "She moved what didn't belong to her." Nora's voice came thin but unbroken. I moved nothing. I measured. And what I measured does not belong to anyone. Pyre's comm clicked twice. Squad 3 was near. Tufar's hands twitched. Cell finally spoke, voice quiet as dust. Marshal, transfer the human to us. We will document everything. Jor lifted 2 fingers. Squad 3 filled the doorway with calm weight. Dr. Nora Dell goes to Med. You 3 report to command for questioning. Mira slid past Pyre and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist the second the bindings came free. The hug said what words could not. Jor watched the shape of that moment settle inside him like a stone in a good pocket. Protocol spoke again in his head, but it did not sound cold. Nora winced and smiled and kept a hand on her child. Jor gave Pyre a nod. Escort, I'll log the seizure of this room. He took a last look at Tufar and the shadows near Cell. Some choices begin as small turns. He had just taken one. Outside the bay, the station hum felt louder, like it was paying attention. Dr. Nora Dell lay on a med cot that had treated too many pulled backs and not enough bruised faces. The med tech moved gentle and quick, like someone who had learned to make care look efficient, so that no one upstairs would complain about the time it took. Mira held her mother's hand with both of hers, as if doubling up might keep hurt away. Marshal Jor stood at the foot of the cot with Lieutenant Pyre. A thin screen showed scans from a small wafer the team had retrieved from the Dell quarters, exactly where Mira said it would be, tucked behind a ventilation grid under a loose bolt. Jor liked facts that could be touched. The wafer was a fact. The readings on it were another. Explain it to me like I am new to rocks, Jor said. Nora swallowed, dabbed her lip, and breathed. In the new drift under Seam 12, our survey pinged a void, not a natural pocket. The walls had smooth arcs, tool marks, but not from our tools. I ran a spectrum pass. The lattice signal was wrong for Carthus, a pattern called Vesperic, used long ago when people hurried power into tiny cages. She squeezed Mira's hand. Those cages broke once and a whole system dimmed. Pyre blinked. The Vesperic incident is in Union Training, page 1. Nora nodded. Yes. Think of a delicate bridge of light carrying too much weight. If you see those beams in your rock, you report. Because they don't belong in a mine. And you tried to send it out, Jor said. Not unkindly. I tried to send a warning to Union Science Channel, she answered. Not the Guild. Because I knew the Guild would bury it under profit reports. The signal failed. I hid the wafer and told Mira to run if anything happened. Mira looked at Jor. I did. You did, he agreed. His voice did not change, but something in it softened around the edges. A chime sounded. Station administration requested Jor's presence. Director Malkin seldom used the polite tone attached to such summons, unless he planned to raise his voice in the meeting. Jor exhaled. Pyre, stay with them. 2 outside the door. Rotate watchers, no gaps. In the corridor, the floor panels reflected ceiling lights like a river on a windless day. Jor walked past a wall display cycling Guild slogans about teamwork and safety. He had served on enough stations to know that a poster could declare anything and still be exactly paper. Director Malkin's office was clean enough to squeak. Advisor Seal stood at his side, paws folded, eyes unreadable. Boss Tufar leaned on the window rail with a look that said he liked gravity when it made others bend. Malkin started with a smile and used it like a borrowed tool. Marshal, thank you for swift action. The Guild appreciates order. Order requires law, Jor replied. Law agrees, Malkin said. So hand over the data wafer. Proprietary information belongs to the Guild. We will review and, if necessary, forward a summary to Union archivists. The wafer is evidence, Jor said. Security will review it first for Union-level risks. After that, if clear, it returns to you. Tufar's jaw worked. You got brave for a contract guard. I am not a contract guard, Jor said. I am Saurine Security, sworn to protocols and to the Union's peace. Cell's voice brushed the air. Marshal balance matters. The Guild funds this station. If you break trust, the Guild ends the Saurine contract. That would make your position thin. Jor imagined a thin line stretched across a canyon. He had walked worse. Then we will all tread carefully. Leaving the office, he could feel the meeting snapping at his heels like static. He headed not to his desk, but to the Dell quarters again. Pyre looked up from the doorway. 2 Guild contractors tried to move the child. Pyre reported, quiet and edged. I told them to bring a union order. They did not have one. Good, Jor said. And he meant both the report and the telling. He stepped inside. Mira sat on the bunk with her patched bag. If they come again, I can hide under the lower shelf, she said, practical and tiny. There's space. You will not need to hide, Jor said. We will move you somewhere safe. Nora's eyes searched his. You believe me, she said, and it landed like surprise and relief wrapped together. I believe the wafer, he said. And I believe a child who ran toward a wall of scales because she believed help lived there. He tapped his comm. Pyre, prepare a small shuttle. Minimal crew. Note for the log. Union science handoff. Pyre's answer came steady. Understood. In Jor's private room, the wafer code opened like a steady door, no tricks. The spectra lines sang the same odd song Nora described. He looked up the Union seal that governed Vesperic signatures. The rule glowed simple. Report immediately, preserve evidence, protect witnesses, restrict access. A list is a fine thing when it lines up with your heart. The station lights flickered once. Then the lockdown hum began, a bass note through pipes and panels. Jor's comm hissed with a message from control. By order of Director Malkin, secure all bays, hold all shuttles. Almost on top of that, Pyre cut in, voice lower now. Marshal, they're moving. Jor answered, so are we. He closed the wafer case, slid it into his vest, and headed for the door with a stride that did not invite conversation. Some problems asked for more talk. This one asked for movement. The small shuttle at bay, 2 was built for short hops, fast start, fast stop, little glory. Lieutenant Pyre ran checks with fingers that did not waste a twitch. 2 saurine crew sealed the fuel collar and nodded to Jor. The Dell family stood in the shadow under the wing, Mira's hand inside Nora's again like a promise. We will move you to Haven Wheel, Jor said. Union border station. They will secure you and the data. Nora chewed her lip. And you? I finish what I started, he said. Then he leaned closer so only she heard the next part. I will not leave you uncovered. Mira looked up. Do we get to see stars without offense? If Pyre flies gentle, Jor said, and Pyre's mouth tilted in something like a smile. The bay doors began to slide when the red bars flashed and stopped them halfway. The lock signal snapped from green to stubborn amber. Jor's comm chimed with Malkin's voice riding the air like a thorn. Marshal Jor, you are to stand down. Transfer the humans to guild custody at once. Locked door, Pyre said, eyes on the pane. We can't clear that gap. Jor scanned the status board. A path existed between the problem and the solution, but it ran through a place no one wanted to walk. Pressure, he said. We bleed the bay. The release will nudge the doors apart. Pyre's brow ridge lowered. It's the rough way. It's the open way, Jor said. He keyed into the emergency system and spoke for the log. Bay 2, controlled decompression in 10 counts. All personnel secure. The alarm sounded a flat tone. Contractors in the hallway grabbed for emergency suits. Jor hauled a suit from the wall rack and snapped seals in a practiced dance. Nora and Mira wore belts with small inflatable hoods. Pyre checked them twice. Air began to thin. The fog of breath turned to frost dust and lifted like a ghost. Pressure hit 0. The door groaned. The gap widened, not pretty but enough. Go, Jor said. Pyre manned the ramp and guided them in. The shuttle lifted on a lurch that made Mira gasp and then laugh because sometimes fear and thrill hold the same hand. A crackled order shouted from the hall. Disable that shuttle. A bright line sizzled past Jor's shoulder and scored the deck. He slid behind a brace and returned a warning shot to remind reckless hands that a stun setting still had teeth. The shuttle engine swelled from hum to honest roar. It kissed the doorframe hard enough to shake loose a small rain of ancient paint and then pushed itself into black space like a fish finding water. Jor turned to bolt for a pod, but a figure stepped into his path. Boss too far, breath loud inside a suit, held a cutter meant for stubborn rock. Jor hated cutters in bays. They wanted more air than safety could spare. Too far lunged with the narrow purpose of a man who thinks he can bend truth if he grips it tight enough. Jor shifted in the lightness of 0G, let Tufar's rush slide past, and used the man's mass to send him spinning gently into the wall mesh where he stuck and swore. Advisor Cell floated in the doorway, no weapon in paw, eyes quick. "Marshal," Cell said. "Choices ripple." "They do," Jor answered, and pushed off toward the pods. Director Malkin's override locked the pod doors a breath before Jor reached them. The denial tone was almost smug. Jor's fingers moved through a code that lived in Union memory and Saurine training. The panel hesitated, argued with itself silently, then yielded. The pod cycled green. Two contractors at the far hatch raised weapons and fired in short bursts that spattered the pod hull with harmless light. Jor slid inside and sealed the door. The launch was a firm shove that made his ribs notice their job again. Outside, Ridgeway 9 shrank to a scrap of metal scribble on black velvet. In his pod, Jor toggled a transmitter and spoke a packet to Haven Wheel. "Data incoming. Witness transport in flight. Union rule triggered. Details follow." The message sped ahead like a small bright fish through dark water. A soft tone sounded. Pyre's voice came through calm and sure. "Marshal, we cleared the beacon. Docking at Haven Wheel in 10 hours. "Hold course," Jor said. He stared at the wafer case set in the pod's side bracket. He was not fond of destiny talk, but he respected lines well drawn. The line he followed today connected a child's courage to a gate officer's decision to listen. Lines like that deserved steady feet. A second tone. Pyre again. "Mira wants to send a message if allowed." Jor let silence sit for one breath, then another. Aloud. The voice was small and warm. "Thank you for hearing me when I was noisy and scared," Mira said. "I think you were brave first. I just reminded you." The pod felt bigger and quieter at the same time. "Message received," Jor said. He left it there because anything more might have turned into a kind of truth that liked to be said in person. Hours later, the pod's guidance lights blinked for the approach. Haven Wheel grew from a dot to a ring, steady and patient. Jor flexed his hands and prepared to report. Haven Wheel smelled like clean filters and shared purpose. Union badges moved through the spokes of the station with the quiet focus of people who believed rules worked best when they guarded lives, not only ledgers. Investigator Thren, tall and soft-voiced, met Marshal Jor at the docking collar. "Your packet reached us," Thren said. "The Guild's operations are paused pending review." "The witnesses?" Jor asked. "Safe," Thren said. "We'll record statements after medical clears them. Your report is thorough. If all Union officers wrote so plain, I would sleep better." "Plain is easier to check," Jor replied. A room with a long window waited for him later. Nora and Mira stood there together, the stars putting silver in their eyes. Nora stepped forward first. "Thank you," she said. "I know you will say it was only duty. Perhaps duty can be kind, too." Mira tugged his sleeve with the fearless gravity of a small planet. "We saw stars without offense." She smiled. "Pyre flew gentle," Jor nodded. "I am glad." He let quiet sit with them for a little while, a warm kind of silence that knew it was welcome. Then duty called again, not as a weight, but as a road. He went to give his statement. Words mattered. The right ones could keep doors open that might otherwise freeze in place. Months moved the way station time does, with clocks that pretend to be suns. The Orion Quarry Guild faced questions that did not fit under rugs. Vesperic signatures were sealed behind layers of Union caution. Ridgeway 9 learned new posters and a truer safety culture. Boss Tufar wrote apologies into files that would not forget. Director Malkin found that titles hold only so long as trust does. Advisor Cell testified with the clean edges of a record keeper who knew exactly which lines could not be pushed. Marshal Jor received a transfer not to a desk that forgot him, but to the Union Academy. He took a teaching hall with soft lights and clear acoustics and filled it with cadets who wore hope like a hidden badge. His course was called Emergency. Protocols? But what he taught felt older and simpler. Read the line, remember the person, hold both at once. On a gentle day, he set a scenario before the class. You stand gate duty at a remote post. A young citizen of a non-dominant group arrives in distress. Your orders say to refer such matters elsewhere. What do you do? He watched heads tilt and hands hover. Human cadet with bright eyes and a calm voice lifted her hand. Her name patch read, Mira Dell. Sir, she said, I would listen first and long enough to really hear. The act of coming to us in fear is an early sign that harm may already be growing. I would keep the child safe and go look because sometimes the fastest path to order is through care. Which rule supports that choice? He asked. Union Core Principle 3, she said without checking a screen. Protect life and prevent harm above lower directives. A low murmur passed through the room, the kind that happens when something obvious is spoken and suddenly feels new. Jor let the sound settle, then gave the smallest nod. Correct. Protocols serve principles. If you forget which is first, you will stand in the wrong doorway at the right time. After class, Mira waited by the rail. The academy windows looked out on a slow river of stars. My mother sends thanks, she said. She teaches now, and we live in a place with a garden that smells like rain, even when it is recirculated air. She hesitated. I thought I would be a scientist like her. I chose this instead. Why? Jor asked. Science finds what is broken, she said. Security helps people cross the broken part without falling, she smiled. Also, I wanted to learn how to stand still in doorways until the right ones open. Jor felt a small warmth that had nothing to do with the climate controls. You stood still once when the world shook, he said. You also ran. Both were correct. She looked at him, steady and unafraid. You heard me, she said. That is why we are here. Later, as the room emptied and lights dimmed to evening, Jor stood alone and thought about the thin line he had chosen months earlier. It had led from a crowded checkpoint to an old bay full of bad choices, then to a hard decision, and a narrow gap in a stubborn door. The line kept going, into a new class and into a future where rules would still be needed and hearts would still be loud. He did not say this to anyone, because some sentences live best in the quiet place just behind the tongue, but he knew it was true. The smallest brave voice can tilt a great machine by a single degree, and a single degree given time and distance can carry a ship to a kinder star. As he shut down the hall, he glanced once more at the window. Outside, the stars moved like patient lanterns. Inside, a lesson hung in the air. Watch closely, listen fully, act with care, and when a child runs toward you, do not become a wall. That, he thought, would be lesson 1 tomorrow as well, and probably the day after. For as long as the academy needed doors, and as long as people needed someone to keep them open just a little longer,